Oh, I love it when it does that. Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Talk With. I'm here today with Connor Chadwick. Introduce yourself. Oh, more that way.
Hello, I'm Connor Chadwick. I'm Overton Audios on YouTube and SoundCloud, and I'm here with Rory.
Ooh, that's me. So,
I've introduced myself and
just genuinely to begin, how are you? You doing all right?
I'm all good. Yeah, I'm all good. I've had quite a decent work week.
Hmm.
Been able to sort of work from home this week. I was meant to potentially be going on site tomorrow, but that got cancelled. So I'm effectively got a whole week of work from home, which
Yeah.
is a nice bonus because it means I'm not shattered from traveling up and down the country, and I can actually, if I feel like it, do some editing in the evenings, which is nice. It's nice to
Ah,
have
yes,
it
editing.
for a week.
Ooh, I
Yes.
mean, editing. What do you use to edit? By the way, I've never asked.
Um, I I don't really go with the. Well, the thing is, I use a mixture of Adobe Premiere Pro and Adobe Audition,
Mm,
and you would think that considering it's audio editing, that I would probably use Audition to put together the whole thing, but I don't. I use Premiere Pro to put together all the audio files. I import all the files onto Adobe Audition, and I just denoise all the hissing sounds in the
yeah.
backgrounds and everything.
Oh
I
my
just
God, I
denoise
hate.
all of that and add all the effects from there, and then it just saves itself through a thing called Dynamic Link on Adobe into Premiere
Mm,
Pro, and then I just edit it from there. So when I was making my short films, I'd edit it on Premiere Pro, so
yeah.
it just makes sense to stick with it, even if it's not right.
I can't stress enough how much I hate that hissing or like any
Mm.
sounds that get caught up in the speech. I'm sure you've experienced it. Like I call them mouth noises, but they're like clicks and small like when people are speaking.
It's like a very quiet,
Yeah.
and yet you can't hear it when you're listening to it. But when you're comparing two people's different lines, you'll just hear it very, very subtly disappear when you do
Mm.
the cut between lines. And I have the amount of people who record lines going, I can't record it right now. There's too much background sound. And I go, record a bit of it and send it to me. And they say it, and I go, I'll get rid of that. And they go, no, but you can't. I can.
Mm.
And it's like, well, they've got family downstairs talking. It's like, as long as your voice is the dominant voice, it will get
Mm.
rid of that and keep
Yeah.
yours. That's the whole point.
Uh,
But yeah.
what's been the most challenging audio to edit that you've made so far? If you had to pick like one that
So
sticks in your mind.
you wouldn't think this, because like I've done audios when I've done a whole 12 episode series where the episodes were 45 minutes each, and that just wiped me out energy wise. But
Mm.
the one that actually got me the most angriest and made me almost want to quit was quite early days when I did the first volume with Dan as the Irish Doctor.
Yeah.
It was volume 1, because, and it's not Dan's fault at all, and I never want him to feel like it's something that he's ever. It's not his fault at all, because he's got a bit of a stammer sometimes when he on certain words that begin with S or P.
Yeah.
All the usual ones with like he has a bit of a stutter, but he'd never recorded audio before, so he was just stuttering every single line, and I was having to sit there and listen to an hour-long recording of him stuttering. And as a result, the episodes were almost late coming out, and I was just like, I really hated editing this. And then there were some people who decided to record their lines in separate recordings, one line at a time. And then I was,
Yeah. I've
yeah.
been
And then
there. Don't do that if
there are
you're
some people,
actors.
who choose to do that. Like there are some actors I
And
still work with who choose to do that, but they put a number before it. They go number
yes,
one, and
that's
it
what you
just
gotta
says
do.
hello.
It's not a
Yeah.
matter of not doing it. Like, ignore my advice. Do it if you're comfortable doing it that way. But please
Yeah.
order them. Don't just like write random. Don't just leave it like
Yeah. Well,
how you record it. Like,
sometimes they'll write the line. Sometimes they'll write the title of the line.
mm,
But even then, it's like if the first line's hello and another one like is are you okay? That it's are you okay and hello in terms of the
mm,
order of the alphabet. And I'm not going to sit there. Whereas if it's numbered, or in some cases, some actors put the scene number instead. I can then just drag it all into one file, quickly save it as one file, and then do all the audio stuff I need to do to it. And that's all right. In all fairness,
yeah. I mean,
how they want to do it, that's absolutely fine.
yeah. I mean,
Not the other one.
I've seen and talked to so many different audio creators, and they all have their different kind of processes. You know, like how TT Productions does it all, like everyone in a call, and they all
Yeah,
do
they
the
do it
audio.
live, don't they?
Yeah, they do it live. I've talked to Abby on here. And I've been a part of some of their productions. I know you've been a part of some of their productions, right? Or am I thinking of a different?
Never.
Ah, no.
Almost everyone I know has. But the way that Chelsea Lagan, the way
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
she
Mm.
describes it as me and Abby are basically almost the same sort of producers planning all the audios behind the scenes and all that
Mm.
sort of stuff. So it's like we often find ourselves like sometimes tweeting one another because she's got plans for the next few years, and I'm like, same. And it's like that sort of thing.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
it's
I've seen her backlog
mm,
and schedule, and it's insane. I mean, props to her and to you. I mean, I'm more myself when it comes to audio editing and producing. It's just whatever's done, and then just release it whenever and put it on Twitter and say that I'm
mm.
releasing it. Then it's more off the cuff. Whatever's finished, release it less.
Well,
And
TT
I've
could
got to admire the uh organization of your channel. I mean,
yeah.
Abby's.
I
It's
mean, they've got it better than I do, and I say that because they've got multiple people working multiple projects. So because I see that they have the weekly and sometimes twice a week content coming up, but they're all made by key people who are a part of certain things. Like
yeah.
you obviously got Before Astra. I know they've been working on something called Molly, which is coming in September. Chelsea's in that as well, and then they've got Doctor Who, the Queer Doctor Adventures as well. But they're all made by key people, and
Yeah.
that makes more sense than what I do, which is I'm just very kind of closed off and go, no, I'll edit it all, and all that sort of stuff. And then as a result, the meme about me not sleeping came about.
Yeah. And that's the thing with audio editing, is that with audio editing it takes up a lot of time, for me at least.
Yeah,
It can be
yeah,
it can be very challenging. I mean, the most difficult audio I think I've edited was one that was felt like simple, in terms of like scale. It wasn't like so many voice actors. It was just uh, just read by one person, and it took so long to get it out. It took a year to get it out, and
wow.
it's one of those developments that'd get its own like classic Doctor Who documentary about how turbulent it was. I think yeah, but I mean, even Endgame was less turbulent, and that's like got how God knows how many people in it at this point.
Yeah, we got some lines over to you a few months ago, didn't we?
Mm,
All that. I don't
yes, I
know. I
mean,
think because I got some lines from other people to you, but and then I couldn't remember if I'd done mine or not. And then I suddenly realised I hadn't, and then I was like, oh, no, there you go, there you go. But I was thinking on a good day, I can, if I'm feeling motivated, I can edit about 30 pages worth of
yeah.
script into an audio a day.
Mm. And
That just tires me out though. Like I was editing the other day, I was editing the Halloween special for that you familiar with the story from the Halloween special a couple of years ago that we did,
yeah.
where Dan just asked me in September, "Okay, can we do that?" And I'm like, well, it's a bit late to be asking me that, but okay. This one we've actually organised properly and got it written, but
Mm.
then obviously Dan's had his wedding on his honeymoon. I'm like, I need the lines, hurry, and he's had to quickly record them just like in the mid part between him getting married and him going on the honeymoon. Get them over to it. I've got it edited finally. It's
And
just a massive factory. This.
yeah, I mean, and if or Anya are watching, congratulations on the wedding, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah, how was that, by the way? How was it? Because
oh, it was lovely. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you're watching your friend get married, and you're like, this isn't a very adult thing that's happening. And we've always kind of like everything's always remained a kind of nice consistency in terms of life, and then you see loads of people taking it to the next stage in their lives and everything. It's really nice to see. We were in the church. We went because Dom, James, and obviously Eamon, who's from New Zealand, couldn't make it. We
yeah.
went on a little Zoom, and we just had to make sure they were muted and muted our phones as best as possible. And we just put them in the top pocket of our blazer and filmed the thing happen. And they all showed up in suits as well.
Ah,
I think James was in his. I think James and Dom were in their tenant pinstripe blazers, and then
wow.
Eamon had got his suit dry cleaned and everything, and they stood up when we all stood up and everything like that. It was quite sweet, and we all got
That's the way
quite
to do it.
Yeah, we all got quite emotional because, you know, well, there was Dan, obviously. We'd seen, because it was on a Friday and we'd flown over to Ireland on the Wednesday, so we saw him on the Wednesday and a bit of Thursday, and you could tell that as time went on, as it got closer, he was starting to get a bit nervy. But we all just met. Well, like on the Thursday, we just met up and had a McDonald's, and then went over to B&M and looked at all the figures to calm him down. And then and when it was like one of those things where it's like it's all in planning, it's all moving constantly. He was driving between doing so many different things, and then on Friday, he was stood at the altar, and everything. You know what I mean? When you know when it's like the calm before the storm, where everything sort of goes really silent for a second, and then everything kicks off. It was like that. We were all sort of stood there. Well, we all sat down, and everything went silent in the church, and Dan was just stood there. And it was like that moment where you could see on Dan's face that he's realised all the organisation stopped now. It's about to happen. And then the doors opened, and there was Anya in her dress, and he just cried. It was like we were all getting very tearful. But it was one of those things where it was like they've been planning it for a year and a half, non-stop.
It sounds like it was a beautiful day. It sounds like magnificent.
Oh yeah, it was a very nice warm day as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's the perfect weather to kind of do it around this time. You kind of
I flew back the next day just because I was gone for basically I was able to get half a week off work, so I had to come back on the Sunday just so I could kind of detox before heading back off to work and everything. But what's funny is about 2 hours after I flew, there was a massive rainstorm that flooded the roads. So I got videos from Dan and Anya. They were driving along the road, and I realised they were on the same road as the hotel, around the corner from the hotel that we were at. And water was just running down that road, drains were overflowing, and it was just mad.
Wow.
The weather was just perfect for that day. And it went back to rain and cloud, flooding
it. And to go from a really, happy subject to, because last time I did a podcast, this episode, it was I think it was a day after the passing of David Warner. And since then, we've obviously Bernard Cribbins, one of the greatest to ever grace our screens. I just want to cover that and how genuinely incredible he was in Doctor Who, which is obviously my main, most people, not most people, but most people within the fandom's main exposure to him as an actor was through him playing Wilf and Tom. I just wanted to ask you about just thoughts on Bernard Cribbins and just a discussion.
It was a very rough week, wasn't it?
Yeah,
because you had David Warner, and obviously at the time I was in as we're obviously we're in August now. Next month there's going to be another box set with him, and we just heard as well from Chris Eccleston he's going to be in the 60th. So it's all going to, and that's what's going to be something else I noted, which was it's going to be kind of bittersweet because we're going to have the televised 60th and the Big Finish 60th, and they're both going to feature two amazing actors who died in the same week.
Yeah,
it's weird how the world aligns like that, but no, they were great. They were great actors, and from what I'd heard from, because I was working with someone who was at the time in training, but wasn't able to go forward with the job in the end. But they knew people in the Doctor Who community, like Joe Lidster and Lisa Bauman and Louise Jameson, and they had a chance to hear about David Warner before. Sadly never met him, but he was telling me some stories about what they were saying and everything. It was nice to hear as well. And then obviously Bernard Cribbins. I didn't realise at first that when I watched the movies with Peter Cushing, I didn't realise that was Bernard Cribbins at first until you hear the voice properly, and you're like, wait a second, that sounds familiar. And it was just he's always got in every performance that Bernard Cribbins did on screen, there was always a nice sort of lovable energy in it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I get what you mean. I mean, I think it's very bittersweet watching the end of time now, because you get that. I think one scene that stands out to me and pretty much everyone really is the cafe scene, but also like the one where they're overlooking Earth in the spaceship. I think those scenes in particular for me, they just really hit. I think losing Bernard Cribbins hit me just as hard as losing Elizabeth Sladen in 2011. I don't think a passing is, off knowing someone from Doctor Who and watching their performances. I don't think the passing of of icon has hit me as hard as it did
Yeah.
with Elizabeth Sladen. I think because I grew up with them. I
I
grew up.
remember where I was. I remember where I was when I heard about Elizabeth Sladen. I couldn't believe it
Me
because
too.
I wasn't even in England. I was in of all places, I was in San Juan.
No,
I was on the other side of the world at the time, and
yeah, I'm
it was
in
maddening
where I
because
was.
of the time differences though.
Mm,
When I was away in another country where we're in a completely different time zone, so it was like the early morning for me, and I woke up and just read it on BBC News.
yeah.
And
I
I was
mean,
just,
I'm in the room where I heard it happen. I'm in my living room. I was right by the fireplace, which is over there.
mm,
I remember exactly, and I watched it as soon as it went live on TV. I didn't expect it. I
yeah,
was just completely caught off guard. I think I was about, God, I must have been around uh
2011, so it's
11 at the time.
11 years ago.
I
Yeah,
mean, something like that. But yeah, Bernard Cribbins, I think, is one of the best actors to ever grace the screen. He played one of the best characters and most important characters in the show's history. I think, especially obviously Wilf, but also Tom in the movie. I especially love his
yeah,
comedic performance in that movie, and the fact that he got such a happy ending in that movie as well. I love
yeah.
that ending. I think it's my favorite film ending, that one.
Mm,
And I think he just gave it his all to every performance, and it's such a tragic loss. And I've been listening to Right Said Fred a lot after the
yeah,
passing
yeah,
because all of his other performances as well. I've seen quite a lot of them, especially on CBBS. Watching him tell his stories after I was mainly exposed to that after the passing. It was bittersweet, and it was yeah.
I find myself watching a lot of, like, for example, I'll keep watching the end of Partners in Crime.
Oh yeah, that one, that scene is beautiful.
Yeah,
It's a beautiful scene, and when he's talking to Donna as well.
mm,
I mean, those scenes are bittersweet in themselves because of they were Wilf was only part of the show because of the passing of the actor who plays Donna's dad. They had to
yeah. He was meant to be a nice little cameo for Voyage of the Damned, wasn't he? To go, hey, look, it's that guy.
yeah.
You could always say it was him or something, but then obviously after the passing of the actor who played Jeffrey Noble, um, he was happy to step in that role,
Mm,
and it was nice. It was nice because then yeah, you still had that nice. We had a bit more time with Wilf, which was even better.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I want to discuss, going on to a lighter note. I just want to ask you about your creative process when it comes to Overton Audios and how you began making your audios. Yeah, just generally, just talk about that
Um,
for a bit.
well, I'll start with maybe the first audio I made.
Yeah.
It was 2013 for the 50th, and I wanted to make. I've been making fan films basically since about 2007,
Mm,
and then I stopped in 2010 because I kind of wanted to focus on some other things. I kind of never quite went back to Doctor Who properly until Overton Audios, but
yeah.
I wanted to make something for the 50th, so I created this version of the Doctor who you still kind of see now. He basically was the Cravat Doctor, but very early
Mm,
days and not really fleshed out. And it was just an episode called Time. And ironically, not genuinely, this is why I feel like Chibnall keeps ripping me off. It was on a planet called Time, and except that it was an anomaly. It was like a planet that existed within the time vortex.
mm,
Um, and it was just a little story that I made with a couple of friends and made it in about 3 days.
yeah.
Not anything like horrible, like not anything. I don't think it was too horrible, but it was something very quick turnaround. Just to say I did something Doctor Who related, and then I decided to do a fan film, and I uploaded those visual episodes as part of, like, I called them like a lockdown special thing, because everyone was kind of releasing their own little lockdown specials alongside all the new Doctor Who content we were getting. So I decided to
Yeah.
re-release those. And then 2016 is when I decided to start making Doctor Who audios, trying to develop what I did in that 50th.
Mm,
But I wasn't fully, what would you call, committed. I just wanted to make them whenever I wanted. I'd been making so many short films that weren't Doctor Who related. I wanted to make it every now and again, not be strictly doing it weekly, giving myself a schedule. So it was about 4 or 5 months between episodes. and I didn't really have a strict regime. It was only until I was doing that for the first series, and it was only until I got to about episode 4 that I met John and Harper.
Mm.
I'd uploaded Survival of the Cybermen in November 2017, and I had it on a separate YouTube channel that I didn't monitor or anything like that. It was just something I did on the side, and I went and logged back in, and I saw a comment from John that had come through about 3 months prior, and it was him saying, "Hey, do you want to be in a shared universe? We can have our doctors be in the same universe."
Ah.
And I got in touch with him over YouTube messaging before that got stopped, and then we exchanged Skypes and everything, and we went on Skype and talked a bit, and he said that he's just
Skype as
released,
well.
yeah,
Wow.
and then
The flashback.
yeah, and then we just chatted a little bit, and then he was still developing his. I said I'd think about it, and then literally the day after, Dan said to me, Daniel J. Patton said to me, "Hey, do you want to be a part of DW 2012?" And I was like, "All right then." Go on then. And then he said, "Well, what would go on in the story?" And I said, explained how in what I'd done was make a parallel Ninth Doctor where the Daleks won the Time War, and he left that universe because it was getting destroyed, and he landed and arrived in what I called the Prime universe, but supposedly could now be the DW 2012 one, because there was a plan that the Doctor, after Dan's Doctor, would disperse into atoms and stop existing or something like that.
Yeah.
So that was initially the original ending for DW 2012. So we talked about where I'd be, and we talked to Luke Newman about it too, and we thought it's not going to be wise doing it before everything because then I'm so restricted. And then I talked to Dan about it, and Dan said, "Look, I've already got a set plan. I know what I'm doing. Why don't we just, if you're playing a parallel version and the Doctor's gone, why not just have it be after this point? So you're now the furthest point." Got it all confirmed with Luke and everything, and we just did it. I finished off series 1, which is why randomly throughout it, Dan suddenly makes a cameo, and then sort of setting all these things up. And then in series 2, we just made sure it was all much more better connected, and then we just went on from there. And I had the regime I've got didn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
And it's a funny story about how it happened, because when I say it without context, it sounds like I was thrown in a mental asylum.
Yeah. Well, I think my cat
Which is that I was working at Broadmoor Mental Hospital at the time, and it was the brand new development that they finished in 2019, because I work for my dad's construction compliance company. So we were down in Berkshire a lot for that, and whenever we were on that site, it was pretty much finished, but it was all wrong. I had to sometimes sit there for a whole day. I'd only have one small job to do to quickly look at it, and then I'd be sat with my laptop without signal for hours, sometimes up to 6 hours. So I just opened Celtex and would just start writing. I just didn't really care about what I wrote, because at the time I was making another series called Waterside, which was so strict and had me writing scripts and getting confirmed with other producers. And at the time, we were kind of at each other's throats because we were arguing about what we wanted to happen in the series. And I just went, well, I'm the one writing it. I should have a choice as well, and all that sort of stuff, and not feeling very collaborative at the time. But I wanted to just write something that I could just write and go, done, I'm making stuff. So I just started to write Doctor Who, then I wrote the General Marsh stuff, and I wrote about a year's worth of content in about 6 weeks. And that's how I ended up a year in advance of everything. And then from there, it just continued. It just continued and continued. And then obviously the lockdown happened in 2020, and then I had more time to do things. In fact, like when we did Uncharted,
that's when I started. That's how I all began back in lockdown. It was I started my first few audios. I believe my first one was actually one that's not accessible anymore, completely not accessible. It was one it was a really, really terrible script. It's called Return of the Schalke, and it was based on like a Ninth Doctor meeting the Schalke Doctor. I was kind of getting into it then, and I just kind of thrown myself into audio editing. So I had no experience prior, no editing experience prior. And of course through that I had to teach myself how to do it. And then I did a few more ones that aren't accessible anymore because they were slowly becoming my most viewed videos, and they weren't good whatsoever. Because you know the first ones you ever make are most commonly like the videos that people go back to look at. The one that's then there was the first episode of Dark Days, which is when it all kind of took off. Which that one was taken down for a while, but that's because I'm redoing it. It was an adaptation of the Night Walkers, which was the
Oh,
second
right.
generation, but it was basically it was an adaptation but done very differently. I had like the fugitive Doctor meet the second Doctor, and I challenged the writer to include Salamander. It was a whole thing. And then that's kind of where I kind of properly devoted myself to audio editing and teaching myself more about it. And as I continue to edit onwards, you can kind of see the progress through my channel, although the orders kind of changed now. I've ordered it all differently, but if you watch it upload order, you can kind of see where I was teaching myself more and more up until
Yeah.
now, where I'd say I'm at a pretty consistent quality. And I really enjoy making them. And yeah, that's how I got into it, which was just mainly just throwing myself into it during lockdown where I had the time to
Yeah.
do it. Of course, I'm going to uni later on in this year, so I might not have as much time to do it, but it's also a film and TV school, so I can kind of,
Fingers crossed.
yeah, I can kind of, I'll still do it. I'll definitely still do it. I'm not dropping this. I really enjoy making this content. Um, but there was something recent that happened that kind of stopped me enjoying it, and I would kind of want to pass it on to you because we've discussed this prior, and we've both discussed the situation quite a lot because it's quite a heavy situation, but I'd rather you talk about it more than I do. It's about how Overton Audios has now kind of left the DW 2012 circle. The universe, the connected universe, and how Overton Audios is going forward.
Yeah.
Because of course DW 2012 is no longer a part of it to an extent. Of course, you've still got the Little Red Doctor story out, Transcending Time. That and that was a brilliant story, by the way, phenomenal story. But yeah, anyways, you've mentioned it on your one last thing, you've mentioned it on your own podcast, which people should check out. I'll leave it in the description, and your monthly vlogs, which I'd like to talk to you about after this. So yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so I can't remember when it was now specifically. Was it July or June? I can't remember now. It was about a month ago. About a month ago, I was recording this anyway. That I decided to leave DW 2012. There was just a lot of things going on in the background that I don't think a lot of people see when they see all the content come out. Like obviously, we all try and be collaborative people, and we try and work together with people, and we want that. Ultimately, this isn't just a community of a small crowd of people; it's a much larger crowd. But there was just a lot of, for the past year and a half, there was just a lot of problems coming up where I wanted to work with other DW 2012 doctors who a voice that they wanted to work with me. And so we had plans, and then Luke Newman would come in and cancel them. And that's what, like, for example, the first time I saw this happen was actually in 2019. There was a big 3-parter I did called Transcendence. And it was because I didn't predict that lockdown would happen, but it was due to come out in April 2020, and I was doing it in 2019. But it was meant to be a celebration of DW 2012 as a whole, because I'm sort of making these audios in little weird phases kind of thing, and this was at the end of phase 1 in a way. And I thought it'd be nice to have like Luke, Dom, George, and then obviously all the other ones that I work with, like Nathan as Northern Doctor, Pete Adams as Young, or James M. Dean, whoever's playing him at the time, and then obviously myself and Dan. It was just, we just had this idea to bring everyone together and have a real big story. And I didn't know about this whole approach about having to ask someone else permission for someone to be in something. So I just wrote the script and I sent it to Dom. Dom recorded his lines, and it was due to have Ben Walden in as Tommy. And then one day they were filming, I know what scenes they were filming actually. It was the scenes with the biscuit tin outside the house when they were chasing the time flies in series 5, episode 1, you know, when he runs out and everything, and they're running around. It was that day, and they're filming that I messaged Ben again, and because it'd been about 3 weeks of him saying he'd do it soon. And then he then mentioned it to Luke on the side, going, yeah, I've got to record these lines. And then that's how Luke found out about it. It wasn't something I was trying to hide. I didn't know that it was going on. There we go. It's getting
I
very
mean,
dark.
I
But
encountered a very similar situation for what happened in Endgame, of course. Because of course it's quite a similar like scale celebration of all fan content from everywhere around Doctor Who, the fan multiverse in a way, and it kind of
yeah,
multiverses and universes, and then I got George and a whole lot of other Doctors involved, and it was specifically the Blonde Doctor content and stuff like that that he wouldn't allow, and it was mainly based on him having the rights to the character, the
doesn't work
rights
that way.
to the Doctor. That was his wording. He sent me that at 4 a.m. I know you mentioned this on your podcast because
Yeah.
you mentioned Dog Ballot and everything, and that's it's
Yeah,
great.
but that was just the first example that we'd
Mm,
experienced of
yeah.
that, which was well, it's now nearly 4 years ago, and he was threatening to kick me out and everything, and I just said, look, I didn't know that there was a plan. I get that, you know, we all have plans, and Luke is working with Dom on it, so there's probably a predetermined plan. But I spoke to Dom, and then Dom wasn't aware of this either, and they just made things a bit messy. And that was a while ago, but it was more recently that we'd made the Tortured Rebirth volume, and I think a lot of people quite liked it. We worked really hard
It's
to try to get
brilliant.
it done, and it all came out and it was well received. And then we were thinking, right, okay, we know what kind of people. We hadn't really started working on volume 2 quite properly yet, and because we wanted to see and make sure that everyone was happy or not happy about something, we could change it. And then we knew what we were going to do for a second volume, and then Luke just came in and cancelled it and just said that continuity is too difficult to manage. But I'm the guy who managed the continuity for him.
Yeah, that's the thing.
I've got this massive Excel timeline all written up for him, and then there was this whole thing that came out about him actually gonna. I don't even know if I've mentioned this before, but he was planning on. He's apparently planning on killing off all the characters from Rebirth anyway in Series 5,
Yeah, and
but hasn't told any of the people that either.
yeah, I've
So
heard
there's just
about
so that's where all this confusion came in. James and Ben were like, "What? Sorry, we made these characters."
that.
And
Yeah,
then Luke, and this is why this is one of the reasons I said leaving, was because he then turned around and went, "Well, I don't have to tell you anything. It's my series." And I'm
that's
just
the
like,
thing.
it
It's a
doesn't work
control
like that.
thing, isn't it? At the end of the day,
It is very much.
I
And then
think that's happened to quite a lot of universes. Is that what people don't realize is that when you have a fan universe, it's a collaborative effort. You can't have just one person at the top because you start. If one person's at the top, it's not like Luke even started that universe anyway. It was started by Nick and Carter. But that aside, you can't really. It kind of creates a pyramid at the end of the day, and it will just end
yeah,
up being unfair, like a feudal
I
system.
agree that there has to be, in some cases, when you're making a shared universe, there has to be someone there to say, no, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or, for example, if you planned one story and you all know about it, and then like, let's say, for example, I come up with a story where I meet Dan, I meet the Irish Doctor, and it's a story about them fighting Daleks. Then I know Dan has another idea later going, I want to meet the Daleks with the same ones from that story. I go, well, no, those ones are only specific to that story for these reasons. We just haven't. And then what I consider that is that's a statement put forward, and then you discuss.
Yeah, it really
There
should
was
be a discussion, not a strict.
exactly. Whereas when Luke told us this whole stuff about Rebirth, we went on a Zoom, myself and James initially, and James was, I don't know, he was very upset about it. He was, the thing is, and I know it's, you know, I always make the argument, if it's only fan films, it shouldn't be taken that seriously, but James has been trying to make Rebirth for years, and Luke's constantly pushing back again. And then we finally make something, he cancels it immediately after, and then you find out he's killing everyone. So it's like, what's going on?
Fan films.
And then on top of that, you had Luke then saying that James doesn't matter.
Oh
And
yeah,
it's just,
yes.
and that's why I was just like, can't do this.
I mean,
This isn't like I don't care anymore. It's not. I used like it's friends.
exactly.
Friends should matter first when
Humanity over films.
Yeah.
Humanity over the characters themselves. If you're making a universe and barely any content comes out, and the actors that you're like they're not doing it for any money. They're not getting anything out of it other than being a part of this. They want to be a part of this. They want to play their characters. If they want to play their characters in the Endgame saga or another crossover, sure. I mean, you can ask about it, but you can't just straight up tell them no, because at the end of the day, we're all just wearing silly costumes and playing the doctor.
Yeah,
That's what we want to do.
exactly. It's just, yeah, it's exactly that. And it's funny because in May this year, Luke also tried to kick me out again,
Hmm.
and I just told him no.
Yeah,
And he didn't know how to react to that, but no one agreed with him. And then as soon as I said I was leaving, he was saying, "Please don't go." It was just one of those things where it's just like, make up your mind. But either way, I went, and I told him that I basically manage the Northern Doctor and the Young Doctor for both Nathan Carter and Pete Adams, because Nathan's not,
yeah,
he's finished his run anyway, but also he's got work in the industry itself. So he's very busy, and if I just say, "Hey, I'm thinking about doing this," he will typically talk to me and go, "Actually, I don't feel that way," or whatever. Like, for example, the volume we made recently was only meant to be a one-off volume. But now, after the reception is received, he said, "Let's do some more," and we're thinking about doing some more soon. Like, I mean, it just opens up a bit more possibility.
yeah. Thank you
But as a
for
result, I thought, I'm not going to leave them to be
thank you for
controlled by Luke.
getting him a part
So,
of the Endgame saga. That was brilliant as well, having the Northern Doctor part of that. And
then we then had that about a week of me trying to sort of settle it in. And I thought, well, we'd made this Transcending Time episode with Luke, Meg, and the 10th Doctor. It didn't make sense not to release it. And at the time, I'd been messed around quite a bit about the release of it.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, at this stage, we know it's over. The only thing associating us all is this. So I decided to release it. They got really angry, didn't talk to me, but then just post that. I mean, you were on that Zoom call. They just posted up that announcement.
I mean, yeah. I was on the Zoom call. There was no coordination for that announcement, none whatsoever. We were playing Minecraft at the time, and you were completely shocked, as was everyone, that it had been dropped. There were plans to do a coordinated movie.
Yeah, there was a plan because there was a plan that I was going to appear in somewhere in live action, and actually that was going to be something that would explain how this works. Because the problem is, I've made too many stories within this canon. It's impossible to decanonize everything I've done. Otherwise, it's like in the same way that what Luke's statement did was, at the cusp of Dan and Anya's wedding, they got a flood of messages. Are you canon anymore?
Yeah,
because half of Dan's era is on Overton Audios.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking. I even left a comment at the time, and I kind of, and then there was the live stream incident, which was that night as well, where I kind of pointed him out on it. Obviously, I'd run by
a lot of people were when they made that statement. I was surprised. I was surprised and humbled.
I ran by.
I was surprised and humbled and flattered by the amount of people. Who'd come forward going, "What?"
Yeah, exactly.
And
it was so out of the blue.
And then,
and then I was in the we were in the call at that time, and I was dropping messages, just asking questions, pointing them out on why this is wrong. It's like, it's not hate. None of this is hate. I don't hate CW.
He branded it as that. He branded it.
That's what he branded it as. I don't hate them. I want them to improve. I want them to, I want them to be better. It's not a matter of, saying, "Oh, you're wrong, you're unforgivable." It's a matter of saying, "Well, this is how you can improve towards people. This is how you can be better in this aspect." And I think it's also a matter of, in the community, in the fandom, a lot of people who've been doing it for a lot of time have a big platform, a huge platform, and if stuff happens behind the scenes, and if they've built up this platform over sometimes, some people can kind of be defensive even though they don't know everything. Be defensive because the behind the scenes of this is very complex. There's a lot of complex things that we haven't gone into, not our stories to tell. But the things that we have discussed are things we've been a part of and things that have affected us. But the thing is, when creators have this big platform, I think it strikes another problem within the fan base, is that kind of inner circle mentality, the kind of,
Mm. I
you
mean,
know,
I liked it back in the
pyramid.
good old days when I was doing fan films in 2007. My first ever YouTube channel, 9th of May 2007. I did fan films where I had the webcam leant up against the computer screen, and I would have the Tenant TARDIS playset.
Yeah.
I just put that console up against the webcam, and then I'd move back, and the perspective would look
Yeah.
really, really different. And I loved making those, and it was really awful because obviously, it's a webcam, and
yeah.
the microphone was really, you could hear us.
Yeah,
And it
but
was
it's
just us
got a
going.
charm to it. I mean, I think I discussed
Oh
this.
no, that's the thing. That's it. Like when the first lockdown kicked in, Pete had found he'd found an old story from the last ever story he made before stopping fan films in 2009. And he found all the raw footage for it on an old hard drive. So because of lockdown, he just edited it and sent it to him. I think I posted it it's on an Instagram story somewhere. I've got it saved as one of the highlights.
I've been
But
looking some
it's just a TARDIS model put in front of the camera and then faded in with the TARDIS effect, and then they just walk out back onto the street. You know what I mean? It has a charm. I think old fan films have a charm, and there's this misconception that if people don't have the budget, and oddly, I do think that it's because of the amount of production quality that DW 2012 and to an extent some others have given, but they've not done that intentionally either. It's the fandom now getting used to a new style of production.
Yeah,
Right?
I mean, me and Jed actually discussed this, and it kind of happens to the Star Trek fandom, is that so many fan films were suddenly using sets from the show or CGI similar to the show or this huge budget, and suddenly every fan film had to live up to those standards, had to live to those limits. And it's not about that. As I said earlier, it's just about jumping in a costume and being the Doctor for a few days.
I mean, I've learned a lot about cover art creation more recently. It's why, for example, like I got Dan to do most of my cover art. So there was a time where he paused for a little bit, and that's because I was making so much he couldn't keep up. But that's understandable. I started making some cover arts myself, and they're not great, but they serve a purpose, and not a lot of people dislike them.
I mean,
but yet you look at Dan's and you can see the more production value there because he knows it. But that's the whole point.
It's not a matter of not like we're not hating on big production values. I mean, I'm making a fan film, but I'm putting quite a lot of my Christmas money into it when I started. Now I think it's just, and I'm going not for that kind of big production, but the few scenes where where it's kind of where it, like a TARDIS shot or something where I'm gonna need that. But it's not, at the end of the day, it's not about how much money you have. It's not about it's not a class system. None of it's a class system. None of it's fit into that kind of.
It's like nowadays I see audiences judging a TV show based on its CGI, even though they have no idea how it's done anyway. And it's not that you can look at something and go, well, that doesn't look real. It doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
But I watched today actually. I watched a reaction video to the Doctor Dances. So I was watching that again, and I thought, I wonder if there are any now reaction videos from now of people reacting to it, because obviously back in 2005 there weren't any. YouTube was only still in its infancy back then. So I looked it up, and there's a shot where there's that scene in the Doctor Dances when Jack teleports away.
That was the one I thought you were going to bring up. Yeah,
everyone just went, oh, is he going to go? And it cut to the shot of him, and they went, well, that's CGI. And I'm like, you don't need to say that though. You don't need to just.
What were they going to do? Make him teleport?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's because nowadays visual effects have got to such a high standard that when you go back and watch older products, you can see it. Like, you think about the first Tron movie, and you can see, like, having watched Tron Legacy from the 2010 film, and then you look at the original. I can see obviously, like, you can't get into it to begin with, but nonetheless, it's about appreciating the style of it and what they tried to accomplish.
I really don't try to let it dictate my enjoyment, but Twitter makes it so difficult. It makes it so difficult.
Yeah, like this whole recent thing about people moaning about the visual effects on Marvel. Now it's come out that visual effects artists were overworked.
I mean, Twitter makes it so difficult to look at a film subjectively. Everything must be objective. Things from 15 years ago must be objective to today's standards. And it's unfair. It's
Admittedly,
unfair
when
of what
I
they all put
see
in.
comparisons of films now in comparison to what they look like, and the color grading is different. Like I saw someone comparing a shot from the first Thor film from Marvel, from MCU, to the latest one,
Mm.
and then people saying, "Oh, it looks like a TV movie now," and stuff like that. And it's just to do with the grading.
Yeah,
That's all it's about, really.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, but it also serves the story. But nowadays, I'm not going to get too political on it. All I'll say is, I see a lot of messages saying you shouldn't judge people you don't know their story, and then I see the same people judging other things,
Yeah.
and I'm just like, I can't stand it. I've recently made an Overton Audios Twitter because everybody else was kind of like, I'm seeing like, obviously when Chelsea's tagging TT Productions, I'm like, why am I like, and then it goes, and then on her bio it says she does stuff for Overton Audios, but I'm the only one who doesn't have a tag. I'm like, I should probably make one, and then it would probably be good. And as a result, it has helped to learn, the
Yeah.
followers have risen
I
quite.
mean, that's how I advertise. That's how I started, and that's how I gained my. It's a great thing because, like, a lot of YouTubers, they use TikTok, they use Twitch, they use every other social media platform to boost
Chelsea
their
wants
brand.
me to make a TikTok and make some of the audios that I make, like lip sync to them as the cravat doctor, and then she'll duet them as Julia Breslin.
Oh,
And like I'll like get the photo of the TARDIS and like green screen it around me, like stand against one of these white walls behind me or something, and just in full costume and mimic it or something. But I don't even know if I'd be able to keep up with my own words because I'm not really a visual actor.
Here's a question. I mean, about visual acting, but would you ever go back to doing fan films again? Would you? Because I know you were in a few.
It has been something I've thought about. Like somebody asked me this a couple of years ago, and they said, "What would you do?" And I said, "Would you make new cravat stories, or would you remake the ones that are currently out?" And I thought, I'd probably, for example, there's the one I loved making, even if in audio, is it's called the Doctor Calls, and it's an adaptation on the play, the 1888 play, An Inspector Calls.
That is my favorite play of all time. It is,
and all I did was adapt it because Inspector Gould is meant to imply that he was never there.
It's
so the Doctor. I loved that story, and I just sort of wrote in that the Doctor shows up with two other detectives as companions.
I did an Inspector Calls for my GCSE a few years back. Studied it for 2 years, and I was enthralled with that story.
I did the same thing
non-stop.
GCSE.
Like thinking about the inspector being the embodiment of guilt, the political connotations of the story, the political backstory, how it covers the class system. It's genuinely, and like
that one was a difficult one to adapt. It was a very difficult one to adapt because well, when you know the story, there's very deep adult themes in there, to which I had to turn to a couple of people and actually ask, is this appropriate for Doctor Who? Like, for example, there was one of the characters who had
and what are you talking about in the fair?
Well, it's like, do I use, for example, hopefully you know what I mean when I say, do I use the R word?
Oh yeah.
The Doctor Who, because I like it when Doctor Who, I like exploring the idea of adding mature themes to Doctor Who, because
I think
not that the Doctor or anything should be outright swearing, but those sort of themes where like you do talk about things that do happen to people, address them.
And as fan series, we can kind of take it to levels that the show can't.
Well, yeah, like for example, in the end, I ended up just having the responsible party. I ended up just having them say that what they did with the person who was deceased was not consensual. And that's as far as I ever went with saying anything like that. And I thought, because I was trying to think of the balance of, and I wasn't trying to treat it like real Doctor Who, but you got to think of the balance of, if you put in Doctor Who fan film, a child's going to wind up
watch it. You kind of have to.
Yeah, you don't want to turn around and start like throwing out words and teaching them like those sort of things in a Doctor Who fan film. Saying that, even using, like I tried to think about like when because I watched Doctor Dances again today, and they talk about being a single teenage mother in the 1940s. And there's something I noticed happened there, because I haven't watched it in years, that I didn't notice as a kid, which was it cuts to Rose having an actual kind of understanding reaction to it. And you never really thought, and I never really thought of it, but she grew up on a council estate where that was probably things that happened. She's probably seeing it as this is like what happens at home, but in the past where it's really looked down upon even more. Like she was, you could see on her face, she was completely understanding of the situation. And it's something I didn't pick up on as a kid. So that's why I was trying to find the balance between that.
I do love
stay true to the story.
How you can kind of weave something in that you won't understand as a kid, but you understand as an adult.
Exactly. Like the RTD era was actually filled with that. Very subtle.
No, especially. It's very grounded and quite, very, trenched in the real world and real world issues. And that's what I love about it. And I can't wait for him to come back. That's going to be insane. I mean, I
was watching. I know that I spoke about this last night, but I watched Fear Her the other day, and a lot of people don't like it. But when you really bottle it down to what it is, Chloe Webber in that story was dealing with depression after having an abusive father.
And
it's such a light. It seems like such a light-hearted episode, and her vision of what her father looked like was the devil.
Yeah, and I do like that story. I don't really see what's wrong with it. Personally, I would also attribute kind of a similar mindset to Love and Monsters, which has kind of become my brand now because I keep on defending it and saying how much I love it at pretty much every opportunity because it has become my brand. But it's a very camp, very happy episode, but you can see Elton's dealing with a lot. He's dealing with the loss of his mother as a kid, and he's fixated on the doctor all of his life because of that. And then you get to the moment where you find out his mother died, and it's weaved in beautifully, and like how he finds people who have been through similar traumas throughout their life. He finds people who he can kind of not relate to as per se, but people who are lonely. It's an episode about loneliness, and it's kind of about the Doctor Who. It's about the Doctor Who fandom as well. People who have a united, common interest, and they find each other, and that's what I find so beautiful about Love and Monsters is that it covers loneliness, and Jackie as well, and how she handles her loneliness. It's very much and they all.
It's why I hope they bring back more. I don't know if RTD will do this anymore. But the Dr. Light stories are some of my favorites. I mean, Blink is quite well liked, but oddly, the ones like Love and Monsters, where it's really, really, really grounded, and you're just seeing like between adventures, like when Jackie gets a phone call from Rose, doesn't feel in the mood for the date anymore. You realise that from Rose, she's just having a laugh and going, "Hi, Mum, how are you? Cool. Anyway, I'm going to go back on wacky adventures. Bye." And they go off and have fun, and she's just left there to pick up the pieces. And obviously, the way she puts it across is as if her daughter's just traveling across the world. Actually, she's on the other side of the universe, about 500 years in the future or something like that, or the past. We don't know, and she doesn't know either.
And then think if you really think about it with Elton throughout the story is very adolescent. He's very young in how his mindset. He's thought of the name for Linda before anyone's even brought it up. He's thought about all these situations. He's having fun.
He's also stuck in his adolescence.
Exactly.
He's also stuck in his adolescence.
And it's throughout the episode he comes to terms with his mum's death, and he realizes what he's doing throughout isn't healthy. Like when it was just him and his friends, but when Victor Kennedy came along, and suddenly he's taking advantage of Jackie. Suddenly he's using her to find out more information, and he's treating it like a game, like a secret mission. But it's only when Jackie calls him out on it that he finally snaps, and he finally kind of grows up a bit, and then he stands up to Victor Kennedy.
Yeah.
He finally asks out Ursula.
I've just realised that you've made a weird correlation between because I was just thinking about how like when you see his adolescence, like he's not been allowed to grow up since the night he lost his mum. But then also Victor Kennedy comes in and makes it like a school with homework, literally with homework, and they're all going, "Oh, I don't like homework," and all this sort of stuff. And then things start to get really serious and really adult really quickly, and he's got to do some growing up quickly. And then he realizes that you can't just take advantage of it, which is kind of something that teenagers go through. They go through broken hearts and everything like that. This is on more of a larger scale.
Yeah, I mean,
what I enjoyed the most from it, what I actually really enjoyed was not all of that, but actually there's this one little scene when they're walking around asking, "Oh, do you know this girl?" and stuff like that. and everyone in the estate are just giving their opinions on that family and just call them really weird and really odd. When Jackie's just trying her best
Yeah,
in a situation that she hates, and it's just like it's so telling. You know what I mean? Of like,
yeah. Of people,
it's like, you know, it's just, I love that sort of world building where you're
yeah,
seeing, like, we know their story and we understand their story, but from outsiders' perspectives, they're a really weird bunch, and
yeah.
you kind of feel like, no, they're not. But it's just that whole element of the real world, and you know, well,
I
what
think,
we might think is normal for ourselves isn't necessarily normal for anybody else.
and I
You
think,
know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. It's perfect world building on behalf of Russell Davis, and I love. Of course, we can do a deep dive into the serious moments and everything, but what I love is also the humor as well. I mean,
Mm,
I think it's very outlandish, very bold, very camp, and that's what the show is. Let's face it, we're watching a very, very camp show, and it's all the better for it. But it
yeah,
manages to weave the humor with the serious subjects, and what people don't often realize with the episode is that they work well together. Is that people often fixate on one or the other. It's a
mhm,
very serious episode in times, and it's a very comedic episode at times because you have their terrible singing, but it all complements the world building. And I get what they were going for with the ending, but even I can't defend the paving slab. Um,
mhm.
but apart from that, I mean, it's not a matter of taking it too seriously. It's not a
No,
matter of taking it for a laugh because it is funny and it is serious. You just got and it manages that balance because
yeah,
and some people will say it's too serious with all of Elton's friends passing being killed off one by one, but you know that's just what it's just it's a sad story in
it's
that
exactly what Elton says at the end. Maybe that's what happens if you touch the Doctor just for a second.
salvation and damnation the same thing. Oh, it also introduced me to Electric Light Orchestra, and if there's anything I love Doctor Who, I love tons of TV, tons of film and media, but there's one thing I love. It's Jeff Lynne and the Electric Light Orchestra. Yeah, and I'm so happy that Russell because you can see a lot of Russell in it as well, and I love when writers do like kind of inject themselves into it because it's quintessential Russell. That's probably Russell's most Russell T Davis episode of Doctor Who, to put it. Because even like Electric Light Orchestra means a lot to him. I believe it's meant a lot to him throughout his life. He's talked about
Yeah,
it. He used it, and I mean, even the Absorbaloff is based off Ian Levine, which yeah. But
yeah.
yeah, going back to Overton Audios, um,
Hmm.
of course we've talked about you getting into it. What's in the future for Overton Audios? Because of course we've talked about the DW 2012 divide now, but what can you tell everyone that's kind of coming up for Overton? Because you've recently released Dark Universe as well, which is the first of
Yeah.
uh, uh is it a trilogy in the first set?
No, it's still 4 episodes. It's
Or
only 2 volumes of 4 though.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, no worries.
As I was saying, what can you tell us about the future of Overton Audios? Because of course we've gone over the DW 2012 split, which I'll cover a bit more in a second. But what can you tell us? And can you tell us a bit more about Dark Universe? Because that's obviously your most
Mhm.
recent release, Dark Universe 1.
Yeah.
What's the future for Overton Audios that you can obviously spell?
Okay, no worries. Well, I'll start with Dark Universe then. Dark Universe was initially actually meant to be a special 5th volume of Uncharted Past because we initially saw Dan's era as 2 halves. But I said to him, I really, because we'd done like a little volume called The Federation War.
Mm.
And in one of those episodes, it's the Irish Doctor by himself mourning the loss of his companion and son. And I listened to that again and I thought, imagine a volume where there's the Doctor at his potential lowest, you know?
Yeah,
And we were talking about it, and then Dan said, well, no, Uncharted Past is the Chase family, and Fractured Timeline is the Maggie May story. So there has to be a middle one. And then we thought, well, okay, we'll make it a trilogy. But it's not a long trilogy. It's not the same length as Uncharted Past and Fractured Timeline either. It's somewhere in the middle where basically it will have roughly almost the same amount of episodes as Fractured Timeline.
mm.
And basically It's only a 2-part volume, 2 volumes of 4 episodes, and it's basically a different companion each episode, where the Doctor's trying to navigate who he is now and who he's become. And it's realistically kind of like what you might call the road to fractured timeline. Because when you get there, he's already got his regeneration error by this stage. We start the episode off with him dreaming about meeting the Oracle in the prequel episode. So this takes place between the Series 1 prequel and the Series 1 episode 1.
Yeah.
And it's just him having his regeneration error. He's technically mortal, whilst he's grieving and suffering. And we've got the villain called Brax Chen, who has the ability to change reality rather than time or timelines. The example of that would be if I decided he could change reality to say I wore a red t-shirt instead of this blue one.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't change the event that happened, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
We'd still be talking about the same stuff because we're not focused on the color of the t-shirt.
Oh my God, are you wearing a red t-shirt right now?
Oh. But like this thing, it would be something like that. He'd change small details, but as a result, it would mean that other things, options would be open for him. Like giving someone a pen instead of a pencil would mean that therefore a contract that's signed would be permanent, rather than a pencil could be rubbed out with a rubber. You know what I mean? Like it's that sort of thing. Very, very subtle things. And there's going to be fallout from the first volume that leaks into the second and final volume, and then that might be it for Dan. Because by the time it comes out, I think at least some of the second series will have come out, and we were very clear about the fact that we wanted all of the Irish Doctor audio stuff to be out before his final episode, because he's very keen on once he's done, he's done.
Yeah,
it's kind of sad. It's kind of sad because there was. I'll say this, and I won't say who it is or anything, but they recently filmed the post-regeneration scene for the person who's after Dan. And it was, everyone got a bit tearful about it. I saw photos of the person in Dan's costume on the TARDIS set, and you're just like, wow.
Wow, that's
like because it's taken him 10 years, really. He started it in 2013. Then there were little breaks in between before his series properly started filming in 2017. Fractured Timeline basically acts as the timeline of Dan and Anya's relationship, now marriage. You know, it develops more and more, and you never. The way it would end, I imagine, would be like, because how much it would be complete poetry, wouldn't it, if the series ended and then as soon as they were coming up to the ending of filming, Anya was suddenly pregnant. You know what I mean? It'd be like, then that is like a true timeline of they'd only been together a year. Halfway between series 1 and 2, they got, the gap between series 1 and 2, they got married. Then by the end of series 2, their family started. You know what I mean? That would be lovely. But no pressure to them.
No pressure.
But no, in terms of the future of Overton Audios, we had to. That's why before Luke and Meg announced it on Twitter, I had to sort of figure out what we were doing because of the continuity element. But the fact that I've done stories where Luke is in my stories, and he considered the Transcending Time episode that we released canon, but it's made by me, and there are references to my era in it because the Daleks, they reference my era.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, how does this work? But they consider it canon, so therefore I do it. You know what I mean? It's a silly thing. I know, obviously we always.
It's completely understandable, because I think the thing is, if you're creating something, if you're creating a series or redoing a series in this case, and then you suddenly start changing things that are going to affect other people's work, you should think about the responsibility you have. With great power comes great responsibility. In other words, you have the power to change things, but you should really ask, who else will I impact by doing this? I think that's just
Luke on that. Well, we call it the cursed live stream, I think. But on that live stream, Luke and Meg were quite understanding of the scenario, and they said that essentially everything I've done, from everything like any other DW 2012 doctors that appear, they're still canon to me.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird because when you describe it, it sounds like Luke left.
Yeah.
That's what's funny, because he's going to do his own thing. Meanwhile, I'm going to stay to the continuity that I have. He's going to, it's like he's gone off to do his own thing. And as a result of this split as well, we've gone from DW 2012 having 7 Doctors to now having 3, and only 2 of them are active. It's like that's a massive, huge shift.
The blonde.
Well, the three that are left would be Luke, Dom, and Dan.
Oh yeah, Luke, Dom, and Dan. Because
but Dan's obviously in his own bubble anyway.
I don't know what they're planning for the blonde Doctor, if they're recasting for that, but
there is a plan. There is a plan, but it's gone horribly wrong as of today.
Yeah.
We got a little there are things always going wrong, but no, it was what happened was there was still this discussion about ownership, and George had actually left in January or February. He left a long time ago, but we were still making stuff with him, and we like Overton Audios are still wanting to. I say that like I'm not Overton Audios, but like we've discussed this, because obviously yourself and Jed put out that tweet that you're working on Blonde Doctor stuff.
That was when the live stream happened, because
but then of course George and I also want to do some Blonde Doctor stuff, and we've come up with something which is leading into what I'm kind of doing. Like I'm without realizing it, I've realized I'm kind of doing a weird Time Lord Victorious kind of thing, but it's basically the Torchwood Rebirth volume that we made actually has set up this divide really, really well. Because we had, it's called I'm nicknaming it at the moment like the Nexus Saga. And it's not going to be horribly long. It's just going to be a few key stories about certain elements throughout this universe that explain a few things, like how there's a nexus point in Rebirth. And we're going to explain like how Torchwood has now evolved as well. It's no longer called Torchwood Rebirth because Luke came up with the title Rebirth. So we didn't want to bother him, and we wanted to push forward. So we're just calling it Torchwood Nexus. And we're doing a couple of stories with Blonde, which would explain how both of the versions that we're all going to do are different.
And it was really through the Blonde Doctor stuff. Working with people, because I in the Endgame saga, I ended up working with pretty much everyone involved behind the scenes, pretty much. At the end of the day, and that was when it was when Luke messaged me at 4 a.m. asking me not to use the characters, even some of the ones that he was recording.
That still doesn't sit well with me that he contacted you at 4 a.m.
It was evident he hadn't even watched them, hadn't even watched Endgame Part 1, because he asked.
It's funny because he was telling you these things.
He asked
was telling you these things,
and Dom recorded it's funny, and he's recorded all of his lines.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like he was saying, "Oh, you don't have the right." It's like, Luke, you were there.
That's the thing. When the live stream happened and he began vilifying me, it was very. I didn't really point it out, but
it's really sad that
it was really demoralizing, and I suddenly started to feel really down.
It was a case of he was gaslighting you and George in that live stream.
He made me feel very it wasn't really depressed, as we said, but I was very sad about what I do in terms of the Endgame saga. And I even put out a few tweets a few weeks ago now, because I just gone skydiving a few days before, and I was having a crash, basically, pretty much. No dive, pun entirely intended. But it was kind of like, and I started tweeting about the Endgame saga and realized, hang on, all I can think about here is the drama related to the Endgame saga. All I think about.
We spoke about it very briefly, and my view on it was they recorded it. You should continue to use it. They didn't. There was no payment involved, no contract signed.
Exactly. But I started putting out an announcement, stuff like that, like, oh, there's been some creative differences and such, and it was fairly obvious I was talking about what happened to Luke and Meg's live stream as well. And then I deleted those tweets soon after, because I felt like it was a bit too soon. But it suddenly became that's kind of why I ended up taking a break on Twitter and off social media for a bit and from writing, because I realized, hang on, the negatives are starting to outweigh the positives when
Yes,
working
yeah.
on this. So I took a
Well,
break, reworked
we've
it.
had, well, I would like to say we've had a quiet couple of weeks. It's just that it's moved on to somebody else instead
Yeah,
of Luke, basically. But
I mean, I'm
no, I mean,
feeling better now.
Luke's taken a break as well. He's taken a break as well. He decided to release Vengeance of the Bloodline in the end after, annoying everyone by cancelling it. And then he's released it. Dom's got new content finally, and now he's trying to finish off future episodes, but at his own pace, and that's sure. Whatever.
Yeah, I would say Dom
At
is
this stage,
completely
the best way to describe what's happened with Overton Audios, and I've just found the message because you're familiar with Michael Cox,
yes. Yes,
voices
I've
the
heard of it.
First Doctor, and
Yeah.
and also voices the War Doctor in some cases as well.
Yeah.
He very much is. The comments that he writes in my audios are so well written,
I've
and
seen them. They are very.
they're lovely, and he's such a great supporter of what I'm doing, and he messaged me privately over Facebook and just asked if, because he'd listened to the podcast, the Overton Audios podcast, where I'd explained this all, and I realized I'd actually said in a one-liner, explained exactly how continuity works. I've been kind of explaining it really convolutedly. But the best way to say it would be, with the continuity for Overton Audios, is imagine DW 2012, the universe as a whole, but there are Overton versions of it. That's it. Sort of like what we're doing with Blonde.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I
there's
mean,
different versions of that.
I don't want to talk too much about what we're doing with Bond because obviously there's
No,
different
of course,
sections. That is going to be revealed in time, of course. But for now, it's very kind of. I'm planning on doing a video with some of the group that are managing it, but at the moment, that's all very kind of in the works. But yeah, I think that live streaming,
the future's looking bright though.
it is looking bright, and I think to sum up all of this in one kind of sentence, when creative freedom is overshadowed by creative dictatorship, it doesn't become fun anymore. It doesn't become fun for anyone, the voice actors. And when voice actors want to do something else with their character, because it's just as much their character as it's the one at the top of the pyramid in this fan universe kind of scheme, in a way, inadvertently connecting it to a pyramid scheme, because once it becomes fan dictatorship over creative control for everyone involved, that's when it kind of becomes a pyramid scheme, because you've gotten yourself to something that it's kind of difficult to come out of, especially if there's like a ton of continuity and you have to find new ways. But fan creative freedom is it's the backbone of this community. It's the backbone of Doctor Who itself officially. Once you suddenly start dictating everything, Doctor Who is a limitless show. If you're dictating a limitless show to the point in which nobody can do anything with it, no voice actors can take their characters and do what they want to do.
I mean, show's always been riddled with continuity problems.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously, if you're watching things concurrently, because in some cases there are going to be Doctors happening at the same time that are thousands of years apart, it's more obvious to notice those things. But with, for example, I still find myself referencing a lot of what Nathan did. Like we've got like I constantly, and I obviously ask him about this before I do it, but I always love using Carpathia, for example.
Yeah.
Because it's a planet about to explode. It's like that's a perfect countdown. So there's an episode we got for Mastermind Volume 2 that's coming out in the new year, where the Master's trying to get something off the planet, but he's got a limited time window to do it, and everyone's freaking out and running. Did you ever watch? I don't know if you did. There was a series that only ran for one season in 2011 on BBC One, and it was called Outcasts.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's like mine and Nathan's favorite series, and it was on the planet. But it sounds really generic. It's basically people who've left Earth because Earth was getting uninhabitable, and they went to a new planet and named it Carpathia. So you can tell that me and Nathan really enjoyed it. It was basically about the politics of starting a new society, and then you had like a kind of beings that are not really people who pre-existed on that planet and were like, you're actually invading. and it was a really interesting concept. But it only got one season. It just wasn't really well liked, and it's something that I've thought about adapting for something within the Doctor Who universe, where I don't know, like Daleks invade one planet, and you just see the survivors travel to another world and try and rebuild, with the fear that the Daleks are going to come after them or something like that. I mean, but then again, that might not come out for another 4 or 5 years. I've got stuff planned weekly until 2025.
Jesus Christ. And I've got some backlog, but to have that backlog, good luck.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that's been really lovely too through making these audios, is meeting people and actually engaging in the community. As a result, like when I made my first podcast, I just said, if you want to write something for me, just tell me. I've got such a huge list of stuff to do. Collaborating with
I'm
people.
very much the same. I mean, meeting new people, going to all these BFI events, which I probably wouldn't have done if it wasn't for going on Twitter. I mean, Twitter has its bad moments, but you know, overall, it's connected me with all these new people, all these voice actors. I mean, everyone, every single person I've worked with that, you know, didn't end up like my collaboration with certain people, but you know, like you know, people that end up being, but with the nice people, the good people that I've met, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I mean, being Rassilon Productions has given me so much joy, so much happiness, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I mean, I was on a Comic-Con panel. I never envisioned that when I was a kid, looking at fan content on YouTube, even though I was very much told not to go on YouTube because that was the time of paranoia and everything. But I'd sneak on it anyways, and I'd watch.
Honestly, when I started I started a YouTube channel in May, and I was like 12 at the time. I mean, that goes to show I'm a proper veteran of YouTube. 12 years old, and I'm like going on 30 in a couple of years. And my mum didn't want me showing my face online, but we wanted to make YouTube videos. So I wore a Darth Vader mask, like, you know, one of those ones that was the voice, the life support panel. You could press the button and activate the voice and everything. I just wore one of those and just talked. And then eventually my mum just stopped caring, so I just took it off and I was like, hello. And then Doctor Who fan films came not too long after. I think I've still got the majority of the fan films I made, and to be honest, I reuse those ideas for some of the audios I make. I'm planning new companions for for the next stage of my Doctor's era, and they used to be played by my dad and my sister.
I mean, the idea of Dark Days very much comes from my childhood ideas. The idea behind it pretty much came from me as a kid, coming up with these outlandish, completely bonkers ideas and writing down like a list of all these doctors, and I'd include like the Ganger Doctor, the Meglos Doctor, and all that, because I hadn't actually watched Meglos at the time. And like when I eventually started Dark Days, I now have like a 5th Doctor and Ganger 11th Doctor story, because that was where it came from. All of these kind of, because I Dark Days is kind of my idea of kind of limitless, like it's playing around with the toy box in such bonkers and like pitting like the 11th Doctor.
That's what I loved about the end of part 1, by the way, when you were talking about the wave that was going through the multiverse.
Yeah.
And then you just spoke to the audience at the end.
Yeah, I played myself.
I like that meta stuff, showing that because every possibility is possible, it means that we're involved too.
I will say now that
it was an awesome, creepy moment. I'm just sat there going, oh, because it's like a really, really good use of breaking the fourth wall there.
With what I'm writing now, it gets very, very, very meta very quickly. I mean,
is it going to be you meeting your doctor? Stuff like that.
I could do that, but I have like one coming up with like the architect meeting the purple doctor. I do like,
cool.
I do like and it's called Mirror Image. I do quite like pitting because Jed actually came to me with that blonde doctor story, which had him like meeting every other fan doctor he's done. Like there were like different Georges.
What was it? What did we call it? The George verse? Was it the George verse?
The Guidera verse has a ring.
The Guidera verse, yeah.
Yeah, it's stuff like that. And it does break the fourth wall up, because a huge part of the story's reality is broken. The fourth wall has completely shattered. It's broken down, and there are lines like the architect.
I like those ideas though, because it gives you more exploration with things, doesn't it? Because I still loved the way that, because I was listening to part one thinking, oh, that's cool. I wonder how they're going to get rid of that. And then
I mean,
you just went, hello, audience member. And I was like, duh. I was like, hang on. But it was great because you're now much more invested in it because you're now part of the story. Even though you know it's not,
yeah.
necessarily actually happening, you're like, what's going to happen to me in this story? Like, I
think
exist in the story.
that
It's
was the
quite nice.
main thing about the celebration, because it's a celebration of fan culture, fan films, fan audios, fan productivity, and to actually include the fans in it, like directly, like point out you're a part of this story. It's your job to piece together the broken narrative to get the correct ending. Of course, there will be only one ending, but to kind of implicate that you're involved, your listening is important. It's important to the narrative itself.
Yeah.
It was key, and breaking the fourth wall to that degree kind of embraces the fans in this reality. I mean, there was a moment I had to cut because I always run past all my ideas past the people involved, and if if I accidentally forget to, they always point out in scripts. There was one idea because Dom is doing his architect series, so it kind of conflicted with ideas that he'd come up with, like a more serious tone, where in Endgame I was going to have the architect acknowledge that he was being voice acted by a voice actor, and he was going to have a conversation with himself through the character who knows he's being voice acted.
It's very Deadpool-esque there.
Yeah, that was kind of the vibe with what I was going for, but then it didn't fit with Dom's overall plan with the architects, and I completely respect that. I think that's the thing with fan collaborations and fan universes, is that you have to respect everyone's idea of what their character is and what they want to do with it, just as because even if you're the first one to write for that character, you've still got those actors injecting themselves into that character and still owning that.
But it's also quite nice and liberating as well sometimes to have other people write your character, and even though it might not be entirely correct, like even though it might not be entirely what you visioned, it's interesting to see what people think of the character.
Exactly. That's
like for example, I've got James is writing a Torched episode where Cravat cameos in it.
I've got
and what he's written is something I never thought Cravat would do, but it's got the right silliness that Cravat would do it. But because Cravat's,
because James has,
but it also gave me some ideas, because Cravat's always been very he's quite, somebody described him as a mixture of the First Doctor and the Sixth Doctor. Like, it's very prim and proper, going, yes, well, anyway, yes. But James has written him at a garden centre picking up shovels and compost and everything, and we're wondering what he's going to do. And then he runs off in the TARDIS and comes back covered in dirt. And he goes, anyway, that's done with. And then it was the idea that he was fighting a cryoid, a crimoid or something like that.
It's a crinoid,
but a big dirt monster. But then there's some. But then Eamon, because have you seen any of Eamon's drawings before?
I think so, but I can't recall.
He drew me in a flower mech system, and it's like me, like sort of like his Cravat, like Pacific Rim style, pulling all these like grass vines. And it's just like vines moving, and it's like a big sunflower as a head going like that, and running and doing the punch and everything. And I'm just like, I never thought Cravat would do that, but also it's kind of bonkers enough for Doctor Who that it kind of works. The idea that, because I always want my Doctor to be kind of serious, but this is him traveling by himself without a companion, so he'd probably be less inclined to think. You know what I mean? He's not got something to ground and go.
That's the main thing I'm doing with the Techno Doctor, is while I'm writing most of the film, I've got Jed and George helping me with it, because I'm going through a creative burnout at the moment. But with like the Techno Doctor and my fan film Doctor, I've got many other people writing for him, because while the Techno Doctor plays on a lot of what I've been through, a lot of his arc is based on the time in which I came up with his Doctor, which was this year, which has been a life-changing year for me. And it's but getting other people to kind of inject themselves into the character as well, to inject their personalities and to inject their struggles, because every creative injects their life stories into their work. That's just a fact, even if you don't know that you're doing it. To get other perspectives on the character and what they go through and what their arc is can give them more dimensions, more to them than just we
Yeah.
could give them. I think that's the beauty of fan creativity and creative
Mm.
independence, and working with other people and allowing that to happen. If you don't allow that to happen, the world becomes a much, much darker place. That's
Yeah.
my view, at least. And that's
Oh yeah, 100%.
mainly
Yeah.
where my problems with Luke and that lot started, and then it was just a rabbit hole from there. But and yeah, that's that situation. But the future is looking bright. Future for Overton.
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think in terms of what the last, I think that maybe it might be a mixture of. It's not been 6 months. It can't have been. Maybe the last 4 months, 3 to 4 months have just been kind of on and off drama for all of us.
yeah,
But I feel like we're past that era now because we all knew what we wanted to get out of said drama. But
yeah,
ultimately, we've got that to an extent or had to make a compromise. But ultimately, everyone, because it wasn't that we all had issues specifically, it was us standing up for friends who had those
exactly.
issues.
Yeah, that was
And
what
ultimately, we didn't want to back down for our friends. We wanted to be
exactly.
there for them. And
It was a situation where you had to be kind of careful while it was happening. You had to be kind of, because one wrong word, one wrong moment could spiral. But now that
well,
we're kind
yeah,
of past it, it's died down now. I mean, all of us have moved on. We're all doing our own thing. Doesn't matter what they think. It just matters that they continue with
well,
their stuff and we
exactly.
continue
I've
with
got
ours.
to that point now, and I never want to come across as dismissive, but I've got to that point now where I just can't be bothered.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, if
I,
they start an argument with me, I'm like, no.
I was talking to, like I said earlier, it was just depressing the shit out of me. It was just completely like getting me down
But
about
there are some people
everything.
like,
And like,
you'll know who I mean.
yeah.
But there are some people who you try and reason with and you can't, and they say that they'll change and they don't, and
Yeah.
they do it all over
Exactly
again,
what you
and
mean by
you're just left like, okay. And then sometimes it's just you want to stand up for people, and you should stand up for people.
that.
All you're going to do then is just get about 50 Twitter messages from this one person or
Yeah.
two people, however many people there are in this group, like, because other people will jump in on the tweets. It's always Twitter. But then you end up spending like 6 hours sorting something out. That's what it was like from myself and Luke when we were arguing, which is why ultimately, despite our differences, it's better that I have left, is because we would spend weekends arguing. I'd dedicate time to going, I want to work on something I want to do. And
Yeah.
then I'd find myself arguing with him for 6 hours, and ultimately nothing changed. He's like, the feelings were still there from what we were arguing about, but instead we'd talked about it and made ourselves more angry, and that was it.
I mean,
Um,
if like either Luke or Megan are watching this, and I'm sure perhaps if you've had the curiosity to do so, I mean, I've blocked you on Twitter anyways, so you can't exactly message me anymore, which thank God, because I do not want
yeah,
another few paragraphs. I do not hate your work. I do not hate the episodes you've produced. I only pointed out all of this. I only defended my friends and defended my content as well, because out of respect for the craft, respect for fan filmmakers and humans, because it's not just about fan films or audios or characters or rights, as you put it. It's about human beings who just want to have fun, who just want to be happy, especially when a lot of us are going through shit. A lot of us are going through real life. A
mm,
lot. I mean, speaking on my experience, everything you said on that live stream, of course you've apologized for it. I didn't accept your apology because honestly, I just knew accepting it would give more.
that moment in that live stream
I mean,
when
I'll
all
talk
like
about that
that,
because
without, again, I don't want to extend it anymore, but just for those who may be interested or missed the live stream or watched the live stream and saw what unfolded, that was a rare moment because there's a reason they don't do social media that often, or Luke doesn't. And the reason why is because of what you saw on that live stream where he basically just lost it.
he vilified me and
It
said
went insane.
he
It went
went and he
absolutely
started
insane.
shouting at me, and he
He
even
was
said at,
screaming at the top of his lungs at you
he
and
even said
swearing
at
and
one
everything at
point,
you.
and I quote, nobody enjoys working with me. That was his quote from him. That's not me
Mm.
projecting anything into that. And I don't know how true that is. Of course, I know from perspective of.
I enjoy I enjoy working with him. Admittedly, I think we're yet to create something together, but we talked about something for
That's just
start.
his perspective on it, really. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just like he kind of takes every bit of constructive criticism, every critique at his morals towards how he's acted towards people as, hey,
Yeah, I mean,
really, it's just respect for other people.
I'll be a little bit cheeky here. I'll
Mhm.
be a little bit cheeky and say it's kind of rich of him to say nobody enjoys working with you when everyone just left his shared universe in basically one go.
Mm.
Like, it had been a long time coming and a lot of discussions being had, and ultimately,
Like the one thing
I didn't make the plan to leave when I did. It was on because
yeah.
I was kind of holding it off because I was there for everyone else. I wanted to be. I'm not there for Luke. I'm there for everybody else. But as soon as those comments started to be made, it just was too far.
And also, one last comment on this, because this is something that genuinely makes me angry, and it's not about, it's not necessarily about Luke, but it's the fact that in the live chat, while all that was going on, while he was vilifying me, you all followed along and you started pointing out my mental health. You started pointing out mental health issues and reasons why, oh, even like the people defending me were like, leave him alone.
Are you saying that in the comments?
Yeah, they were saying that in the comments. They don't know me. None of them knew me. And they were talking, none of them known what I've been through this year. I mean, and they were talking about me like they knew me, like they knew what I'd been through, like they knew what my mental health issues were, which,
you can be. I don't think you should ever publicly assume, but I think what you can do is be mindful of it.
yeah,
Like, like that's not something like necessarily.
there were people using it.
I've been mindful of, like, I know if I'm aware of people's situations in the background, I know that, I've been mindful of it. I don't try and psychoanalyze someone into thinking and explaining away a behavior that is actually.
And there were people using it against me, and there was another fan creator that came involved who I was in drama with, who we were all in drama with actually, who started talking about drama between me and him like it was related. And then there's a lot of that going on Twitter of me and him.
I mean, a lot of people have tried using the experiences that you've had recently as an excuse for why you're trying to speak up in people's favor, which is just wrong. Yeah, I mean, remember when we had that, we had another drama call with somebody which I think was one of the trials, as we nickname them sometimes.
Yeah, and there were other people in chat
made all these assumptions about you.
Yeah, and there were other people in chat that just instantly jumped to Luke and Megan, which of course, you don't know.
That's the biggest problem, because they only portray what they portray online.
Exactly,
and that's why it was so important on that live stream when he lost it. That is who he is.
That's how he acts towards you.
That's how he acted. That's how he's acted towards George, to myself. I can't speak for anybody else. I assume it's a universal thing. But when he lost it with me, I heard what he was saying about me, like, verbally from other people, and it was just vicious. Because he at one point he made a comment that he doesn't know how my own parents can stand me. And that stuff, and that's when really things started to go wrong, and he apologized for it. I messaged him and said, I know what you said. I know what you did last summer. No, but like, I know what you said, and that's not on. And he got annoyed that people had told me, and I'm like, oh, sorry, but that's not on.
People have told me about comments they've made about me. Yeah. I mean,
he's older than me. He's older than me.
People have told me about comments both of them are made about me. I mean, God knows that they've tried to put me down in multiple ways while they were apologizing to me. But,
it's ridiculous.
I won't say what they've said, because, of course, I don't want to get anyone who shared it with me.
It wasn't something stupid like, I'm sorry that this happened because of you. Something like that.
And they ignored every point I was making. They fixated on one point I was making and went with that.
Well, that's because that's all they heard.
Yeah,
that's all they heard.
And, yeah, I mean,
I mean, other than that, It is over.
It's
And
over.
I do look back on it and just laugh, because after it was all over, I was just like, great, done, let's move on. And then they were there. I mean, they were there just freaking out for 3 days, weren't they?
Yeah.
Because
Yes, I was just saying, I won't accept your apology just yet. Let's just pause this and wait until after the wedding, because that's the main thing.
Well,
If the
that's what we all
wedding's a
wanted to
week
do,
away,
because
and Dom's
Luke and
second
Meg
episode.
were at Dan and Anya's wedding, and we were all very civil. You know, we didn't, no arguments had at all.
Yeah.
You know, we involved each other in conversations, and ultimately that was it. The moment the wedding is over, I don't know if I'll ever see them again. If I do see them again, I'll continue to be pleasant with them.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? I don't want arguments anymore. I just want to move on.
all of these arguments at the end of the day,
But ultimately, the two people who really mattered in the situation were Dan and Anya. Their wedding was coming up, and
exactly,
we were going to see them. You know,
they didn't, and they just wanted me to apologize. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to continue the conversation. They didn't want me to actually explain why I
they
was
played
saying what I was
themselves
saying.
as victims instead.
Yeah, that's exactly what will happen. And you know, they said, and I quote during the live stream, this will be the last comment I say about it, but they said, we thought you were a decent guy. Well, if a decent guy is being ignorant, being silent when other people are going through shit that you're throwing at them,
the problem is,
I don't want to be a decent guy in that situation.
Guy, they're thinking their thought of you being a decent guy is saying what they think that you think. Then thinking what a decent guy you are is based on what you say, and considering that you're saying things that they don't like, they're just going, that's not very decent. Well, in actual fact, you're just standing up for people.
Yeah.
You're standing up for fan creators being creative.
And you know, Luke and his attitude reminds me of me when I was 16, me when I was 17 to early 18. I wasn't like I was hanging around with very like just not nice individuals. I was constantly like how he acts, not in like an extreme way like he does, but like as a small time ignorant teenager, you know, doesn't know what he's doing with what he has. And then and he's had 10 years in the business, and he's still acting like it towards people. And you're right, because expecting them to change automatically just doesn't end up.
I can understand if he's got plans. I can understand that if he's got plans for his doctor in that story, and if continuity messes with it. Which, you know, it's the same thing that we talked about earlier as an example when talking about shared universes. You should have a discussion, but it's never a discussion. It's a case of, you can't do that, I'm doing this. Or if it's, you know, I don't mind if it's an episode that's already out going, you can't do that because of this. But it's like one of those key things that we've had recently where one of the reasons why, for example, Luke wanted to cancel Rebirth was because he's doing the remasters. And because of that, he wants the freedom to be able to change continuity at will. But in that case, why doesn't he tell Dan to stop making a fractured timeline? Because one of the things is that there's that Dalek invasion of London and multiple capital cities in his second series originally, which is where Maggie May's story truly begins, because her brother dies in that. But now he's changed continuity that the Daleks never went to London. And Dan's like, you better put a line in that episode saying they're in London as well. He's moved it from London to Birmingham.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. So that's the problem, is that the people are messaging me asking me if Dan's canon anymore. People are going to be messaging Luke in a minute and Dan going, what's going on?
Yeah, I think there's a massive problems. Some human, some more fan film related. It just ends up in a bundle at the end of the day. And thinking about it properly, I mean, it's all a matter of just moving on now.
Well, how about I end this on a subject that's similar, but it's funny.
Sure.
It's a funny story. So myself and an old friend of mine, when we were making fan films in 2007 to 2009, I was making Doctor Who fan films back then, and I was the 11th Doctor. That's how long ago it was. I just wear my school blazer. I had one of my white school shirts that didn't quite fit me anymore, but drew and coloured in question marks on the collars. And I'd wear like a little tie as well, so it would kind of be a nice mixture of it. So it would be like I had a suit to try and match Tennant a little bit, but still having my own little flair to it. I was the 11th Doctor, and my other friend Ollie, he was the 12th Doctor. Was it the 12th Doctor, or somebody else was the 12th Doctor? But he was then going to be the 13th.5th Doctor, because he would be the one who breaks the regeneration cycle stuff. But what was funny was we were always in contact about it, but he didn't want to start until I'd gone. Unlike what was going on with DW 2012, where it's all concurrent. Like, Little Red could be happening here, Irish there, and Cravat there all at the same time. It was very much a waiting game. People were waiting for their chance. And it was quite funny because me and him had a massive falling out in 2008. But he still carried on calling himself the 13th.5th Doctor and referencing my stories whilst I was still making. And then he kept changing continuity. And then he had characters who met me also being it, because we had same friends as well, despite us falling out. And then they'd ad-lib it, and then he'd be like, tell them that you prefer this incarnation over him. And it we were kids, we were like 12 or 13. So, you know, it's not like the level that we're talking about just now, but he was, so they come and go, oh, hello, Doctor, what's a good regeneration? I prefer this one over the blonde one. I'm like, And it was just one of those petty things. And it's just like, I'm telling you this story because it's basically a variant on what we've just been talking about, except that I'm nearly 30. I'm not 13. I'm nearly 30.
Yeah, I think the thing
it's still going on. And it just goes to show how childish the situation is, and how why don't we just all work together to make something that is a fan product that we don't own, but are lucky enough to be able to make without necessarily getting any copyright strikes currently. Because we had that mini purge last year, that could come back at any point. And to be honest, I like to think, whether I could be very naive about it, I like to think that maybe the BBC and or the showrunner consider it promotion. Like, because it's the amount of people making fan content is huge, which means even when the show's not on, you hear about it.
Basically, what they need to do is they need to be more like Sega than Nintendo. Another example, like Nintendo are very strict when it comes to fan content, while Sega, you see billions upon billions of Sonic games out there, Sonic fan games and stuff like that, and Sonic fan art and fan TV shows and audios even. I think it's the same with Dot 2, and that's the same mindset.
That's what I think a lot of people considered with Russell T Davies' new announcements for the 60th and onwards. Some people considered it a lower budget because it wasn't announced officially, and I just thought it's really clever and cheap marketing. All he did and Shooty Gatwa did was post emojis, and everyone went insane for 6 hours. And as a result, Doctor Who got trending, and then they announced it. And that evening, they both happened to be in an event in which, because it was trending on social media, and it happens nowadays, social media actually leads the conversation for television nowadays. So as a result, they led the conversation with that announcement, and it spread. And then within a couple of hours, they were at an event. Everyone goes, "We've just heard on social media, it's going insane. What's going on? It's gone viral." You know, it's perfect because you don't have to. You're not paying for the announcement. That the announcement's coming to you. And I'm just like, that's it. The fans have kept this show alive. And it goes, anytime there's an announcement, like, I guarantee it, because of all the stuff that's been going on recently. Yesterday, Rose Tyler was trending. The day before that, Gallifrey was trending. The day before that, Dalek was trending because there was because of obviously the B&M toy figures coming out. It went trending again. Like the fans keep the show on trend as a result.
They literally did keep it alive during the 90s. They literally had a part in keeping it alive back then.
Oh yeah, you got to appreciate the wilderness years. You got to appreciate Doctor Who magazine, Big Finish starting out, and all
the only fan kind of production that we do not appreciate is BBV. And that's what I say. No BBV.
All I will say is they recently had to, not recently, it was quite a while ago actually. I'm not saying recently, but it's something I found out relatively recently. They made cassettes of Doctor Who productions that then got a cease and desist from the BBC.
yeah. They
And
they
then, as
created
a result of their clause, they had to stop production and make all the scripts public domain,
oh
and that
yeah,
there's no copyright to
they're
them.
doing the same with Faction Paradox actually recently, a subset of Doctor Who
Oh,
sub-series. They were making content, they made content for it, and then they lost the license and continue to make the same content. And were told, and have been told multiple times to stop, but they still do it. And
mm.
we also hired a very, very, I think was it Tony Coburn? I swear.
I thought that
No,
was BBV. I thought that was BBV who hired him as Sherlock Holmes.
I think that was Brett Underwood. I think it was Brett Underwood they hired as Sherlock Holmes.
Okay,
It was either him or Tony Coburn. I've lost
they're,
track.
you do know that they're the same person.
They are. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm very
I
sorry.
was
It,
gonna
it
say,
always
like, hang on,
confuses me.
don't get this confused.
It always confuses me that because whenever I hear the two of them, I know they're the same
It's
person.
really weird because I used
The
to be good
names are
friends
so
with them.
different to the point in which I can
Yeah.
confuse them for different people sometimes.
Well, I used to be quite good friends with Tony, which is really
Mm.
weird. I didn't know. I never properly met the guy, but I spoke to him on YouTube quite a bit, and I appeared in one of his really old, like 2008 fan films, because that he wanted to get all the fans in. Do you remember that when fans could film their own cameos and appear in the episode as well, like reacting to an alien or something like that? I mean, I used to do that back in the day as well. But then he appeared as a newsreader in one of my like as a voiceover in one of my other films, and then all this stuff kicked off, and I stopped talking to him. I
Mm.
got a weird Snapchat from him in 2014. I was
Yeah.
sat next to Christopher Thompson, and we were filming Today's Detectives, and then I just suddenly looked at my phone, and I got a
Yep.
half naked photo from him. He was
Jesus.
in bed. It was him in bed with a bit of
Yeah.
thigh showing, and it just said "Join me," quick winky face. And I just laughed, and then showed it to Chris, and Chris just started laughing too.
I shouldn't.
And it was just like, wow, what timing!
Alive. I mean, what
I should have. I really wish we had just responded with a photo of me and Chris going, "Yeah," like that. That would be like, oh my god.
Mm.
That
Yeah,
would be very funny.
and kind of to end this episode of talk with on a
Okay.
very light note is kind of just talking about monthly vlogs you do because I only recently came across some, but I find it very.
I make too much. I make way too much. I don't know how. I mean, I don't sleep.
I mean,
I'm doing a monthly podcast, a monthly vlog, and weekly, every week of the year, audio dramas. Oh,
I mean, I don't know how you do it. It's admirable. It really
well,
is.
the monthly vlog has got an ending. It's just not for another couple of years. The idea was to do 10 years of monthly vlogs.
Mm.
Overall, that makes it to like about roughly around. Well, if you look at it, 12 episodes per year, that's 120 odd. And the idea was to do something like that and to have 10 years of my life fully documented and to see where I was. I started it off at potentially the worst point in my life possible.
Yeah.
So you can only go up. And now I'm here. I was able to get a mortgage. And I'm now finding myself more and more increasingly worried about it as the prices for things get higher. But like that's all part of the journey. It's all good content for the monthly vlog. And then the podcast we just decided to do in the lockdown because I'd been thinking about doing something like updates or something, but then we just decided to. Me and Dan decided to do it over lockdown, and now we're going to be doing number 30 soon, and that will be Daniel's last one as the host as well with me. And so now that he's married, he's sorting himself out. Not that he wasn't sorted out anyway, but like for marriage, he's trying to get Fractured Timeline done. He works for me as well for his day-to-day job as well. There's just so many moving parts, and now he's married. He wants to move. And they're going to get a place together. There's so much going on that he's not got the time really to dedicate to all of it. Yeah.
Yes. But,
and then obviously the audios. I'll just try and get people to write them as much as I can.
That's the one of the things you still keep doing is getting new writers.
And then of course on top of that, I'm a company director at my job. So
never a dull moment, eh? Never a dull moment. I mean, I'll be going to in a year, so I'll have to manage that and audio stuff, which is why I've kind of started making this content on the side because it's not really
Mm.
edited. It's just a matter of like if a call end.
It is slightly frustrating that you've called it a talk with, because I made a mini documentary called A Conversation with Phil Manzanera, and I thought to myself, I've been thinking about it for about the past 2 years. It'd be really cool to do like a series where I sit down with someone, and it's called A Conversation with, and then you just put the name in, and then you came along with the talk with. I'm like, well, I guess I'm not doing that anymore.
Hey, you should still do it. You should still do it.
Yeah, I was trying to find. The thing is, because the first one was Phil Manzanera, who's like the lead guitarist of Roxy Music in the '70s, and that was just because it was for the council at the time, and they allowed me to upload my version of it. That's why it was like 2015 I did it, and I haven't done another one since.
Yeah.
I was just trying to find and think of like, because I want to go and meet the person, sit down with them, and film it. But the problem is, of course, is that somebody else was interviewing it last time, and I was on the camera, and the camera runs out every 40 minutes. So yeah, but nonetheless, it's something I can. Do I want to give myself something more to do?
That's the question, really. I mean, and of course, actually, instead of ending it there, you've also made, you mentioned one earlier about your there's also a film channel that I stumbled across.
Yes, another one.
Films. So
there's another YouTube channel I've got, which I've had for longer than Overton Audios, but Overton Audios recently has just spiked in subscribers, which has been really lovely. Red Matter Productions, I've made, obviously I make the Time Traveller audios, but they're based off of and work with the continuity of the visual series I made in 2014, 2017, made some short films that kind of like about hitmen and stuff like that. And then ultimately I've made a 5-season series that cost me 15 grand to make, so please watch.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the description. And
we're hoping at some point we need to do some reshoots, because obviously actors change between series sometimes. We're going to do some reshoots with the actors who were the final actors in their final appearance. We're going to hopefully do some reshoots for that, and then re-edit and get it on Amazon Prime.
Okay, yeah,
because you've got like an indie film category for Amazon Prime. So we've been thinking about it for years, but
you should go for it. It'll be great. I mean, you can even I don't know what the thing for Netflix is. I swear you can send in films there as well. It's pretty easy, but I not really.
I mean, I've got a story for you about Netflix, but you've already said you want to end it. So I'm like,
no, go ahead.
I nearly got Time Traveller on Netflix.
Oh.
There was a guy I knew called Greg. Well, I'd say I knew him beforehand. I didn't. He got in contact with me. He was the associate producer of Stranger Things season 1. This was conversations I was having in 2017 with him, and he wanted to become a producer. He wanted to produce things. The associate producer does other little jobs here and organising locations, etc., but not the full thing. And he wanted to do that, but wanted to do something sci-fi and wanted to base it off of an initial concept, because he didn't have any ideas himself. He just wanted to produce. So he came to me and said he really liked the Time Traveller stuff I've made, but obviously the YouTube stuff won't be enough to convince anyone properly, because I've made it for free and it wouldn't have any real worth. So we sat down, and over the course of about 4 months organised a version of Time Traveller, which would be, the idea was that it was going to still be set in London and be something like a proper, still trying to keep in, because he used Doctor Who as an example, but I was never going to be the biggest Doctor Who. It was just going to be a proper British sci-fi. And it was going to be a limited, the plan was for it to be a limited series anyway, because the story of Time Travel is someone comes back in time to stop a tyrannical government. It's nothing new, but that's the reason why we had to discuss it and everything. And I was in line to hopefully be a consulting producer, so I would get a Netflix credit, which would have been lovely. The only problem that came up was when it came to pitching it, everything went well and they actually said yes to it. And then it came to the day that I had to go over there, like along South Bank, next to the ITV headquarters. You know where the BFI is? Down the road from there is Netflix, and like where the UK productions basically take place in the UK office. And I went down there, and you have to sign all the contracts and everything. But what had happened was the legal team had tried to gang up on me. So I chose to read the contract, which was lucky, because rather than the original agreement was that they were going to pay me I mean, it doesn't sound like that much, but in comparison to a film production, it's not much. But it was a lot still for me. It would have been about 25 grand. for the idea to be bought off of me and to remove the episodes off of YouTube, everything. And they were going to have the concept, and they were going to own the footage that I'd shot and everything. I'd have to hand over the hard drives and everything. It would have been, they were buying it off of me. The problem is the legal team then turned around and said, we're not going to pay you a thing, and can you just sign over the rights, and we'll do what we want when we want, and you won't be a producer either.
That's
Understand. I mean, I can understand a certain thing is that it'd gone so far that it felt so real, but understandably, the people, especially the legal team at Netflix, were like, "This is just a YouTube film." But they were so harsh about it. They were so harsh about it that they even said to me when I said I didn't want to sign it, they said, "You may not get this opportunity again." So I was like, "Oof, all right."
I mean,
I still said no, and I left, and I didn't hear from Greg for a good few months. He went back on as an associate. He missed being associate producer for Stranger Things 2, because that had come out in October by that point. But in October 2017, he got on board for the third one because that was a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And I haven't really heard from him that much recently, but he was very apologetic for what had happened, and basically, at the moment, probably won't be able to work as a producer for quite a while himself, because they'd see him as the guy who tried to get a YouTube film on the Netflix or something, which isn't really what happened. Then he wasn't trying to upload the YouTube episodes onto Netflix. It was going to be something that was reshot, but it was just mad, and that's the closest I ever got to it. And I mean, it would have been cool if it had happened, but it was just at the very last minute the legal team came in, and you know,
I mean, if
nothing's ever official until the legal team have looked at it anyway, so I don't know why I'm surprised.
I mean, them saying that, oh, you'll never get this opportunity again. I mean, what opportunity? What opportunity for you in that situation if you have no credit?
Well, that's what I thought. Was like an opportunity to work here, an opportunity to be a part of a Netflix production. What would that mean?
Makes no sense. No sense.
No, but that's like, that was how long ago now? Nearly 5. It is 5 years ago now.
I mean,
it's mad.
Going on to one more question, because one's come to mind, because I've asked it to quite a lot of the creatives who have come on the show so far, is because you have quite a schedule. How do you deal with creative burnout when it comes to that? Because I get burnouts in like specific areas. So sometimes I'll have a burnout editing, sometimes I'll have a burnout writing, or voice acting, or anything. I can have a burnout doing it. How do you manage yours, like especially with your schedule?
I had a burnout at the end of 2020. It wasn't even a burnout, actually. Well, I didn't plan it to be a burnout. I actually said I was going to take the month off. And I thought that'd be nice. I'm ahead of schedule, and in January I'll jump back on it again. And I'm just gonna, because it's Christmas. I've had a very tough year. I'm now living somewhere else. I've only just moved in here. I'll just take some time to settle. And I did, and I had a very calm month, and it was nice to kind of relax a bit and everything. But then the new year came around, and I didn't start. And then February carried on, and I didn't start. And then I didn't really look at any audios again until maybe the end of March, near to April. And the problem is that the schedule had caught up with me. I was about 8 months ahead, and I disappeared for 4 months. So everything was suddenly urgent. So I entered a bit of a panic and actually got quite a bit done. But now I'm less productive on it than I was because of that break. So the last time I was able to work on any audios properly was, ironically, this past weekend, but after a 4-week break, because I had other work, because I was in my job, I travel up and down to different construction sites all over the country. I've been to Cardiff, Coventry, Nottingham. I think we've got a new one coming up in Edinburgh soon. It's all over the place. And that travel tires me out. And therefore on the weekend, I'm even more tired with back when I started doing this, I was just a site assistant. Now I'm a company director. There's so many more responsibilities there. And as a result, there's just less time in the day. So I try and make it work, which is why I've been very reliant and grateful for those who have decided that they want to write for me, because I'm like, please, please. And as a result, when they write stuff, I read through it, I make little tweaks here, but then it goes straight off to production after that. And then I typically then monitor the recording process still, and also because people record remotely for me, and then I just edit it, and that's usually it. But how I deal with burnout, I just work through it. That's probably not healthy, but like you got to give yourself a break sometimes.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, it is just a case of it's just a case of like I like giving myself deadlines to keep to, because it means that I've got something to head towards, you know.
yeah. I get.
If I said I was going to make an audio volume about Cravat Doctor but didn't give it a date, I'd probably get lazy and go, oh, I'll do that like next week or the week after, and then eventually I'd never finish it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah.
It's probably not healthy to force yourself, because then it doesn't feel like fun sometimes.
Yeah, probably not. You know,
Yeah,
everyone has their process, and everyone
yeah,
has
that's
to
true.
manage it in a way that does make it fun, that does, you know, make them productive, yet, you know, actually, yeah, but make it fun for you and make it happy for you. Now, I usually end each of these podcasts by handing, there's this golden star, well, not really gold, but this star award that people were handed out at a film competition at my college at the end of the year. I'd usually hand them it because I didn't win one. Everyone was
Oh,
handed one who won one, but I stole one off the desk. Um,
oh,
and I'd usually hand it to people, but I can't find it anywhere. And that's what I was looking for earlier, but I can't find it anywhere. And I'd usually hand it to people and say, now you'll know if you're right. But today, you can win my spare broken webcam instead. There you go.
what, in memory of my old fan films I did via webcam like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
15 years.
Yeah, 15 years ago. Here's an honorary reward. I don't think it's actually broken, so I'll probably keep it. But yeah, and I think it's my sister's as well, so she'd probably kill me if she did actually hand it to you. But yeah. Anyways, if there's anything you want to promote, anything, any channels, I'll put them all in the description, including short film one as well, and monthly vlogs. But go ahead.
Please look at everything I do. I make so much of it. It needs to be seen so it feels worth it. My monthly vlog, I've got like a monthly vlog channel. I've got my short films channel, and then I've got Overton Audios. I think I've got another channel where I put all my uni assignments onto it to submit them as well. If you want to look at my uni assignments, like I've got like however many YouTube channels. Oh,
all YouTube channels and like the podcast, like a specific link for a podcast will be put in the description. Thanks for coming on as a guest. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No worries. Pleasure.
And yeah, check out kind of stuff. Make sure to subscribe to this channel as well. Leave a like and share the video. It's been a pleasure, and I shall see you all in the next one. See ya. Bye bye.
Well.